like to call to order the regular board meeting of the North County Transit District for February 16th, 2023. Before we begin, members of the public who may be viewing the meeting on the district's YouTube page, please note that in order to make a public comment during the meeting, you must connect to the meeting using the Zoom link provided on the agenda. In addition, you must also register by sending an email containing your name or phone number and the agenda item on which you wish to speak to clerk@nctd.org. I will now ask Suhel Rodriguez, clerk of the board, to call the roll.
Board Member Weiss.
Here.
Board Member Hensy. Board Member Contreras.
Present.
Board Member White.
Present.
Board Member Desmond. Board Member Drucker.
Here.
Board Chair Edson.
Present.
Board Member Jenkins.
Here.
Vice Chair Patel. Here. That concludes the roll.
Thank you. Board Member Drucker, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Suhel, will you now provide us with a safety brief and evacuation procedures?
Yes, Madam Chair. In case of an emergency, I will dial 911. In case of an evacuation, please take the stairs. Do not use the elevators. Once cleared of the building, do not re-enter unless cleared to do so by emergency personnel. There are fire extinguishers and first aid kits on each floor of the building. There's a portable defibrillator on the first floor and staff on hand trained on CPR procedures if needed. This concludes my safety brief.
Thank you. Suhel, are there any changes to the agenda today?
No, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Do we have any public comments today?
No, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Before we proceed, I have a couple of quick protocol items to share. First, I ask board members to please hold your comments and questions until after each agenda item has been presented. Second, when the time comes for board questions or comments, please raise your hand and wait until you're called upon to speak. May I have a motion to approve the minutes for the regular board meeting of January 19th, 2023?
I move to approve the minutes.
Second.
Okay, so I believe I didn't see a hand, but
Board Member White.
Sorry.
Okay, Board Member White, motion, second by Board Member Patel. Please call the vote.
Please vote. On the motion of Board Member White, seconded by Vice Chair Patel to approve the minutes of the regular board meeting of January 19, 2022. Motion passes. Board Member Desmond and Board Member Hensy absent.
Thank you very much. There are 10 items on the consent agenda for action today. Suhel, have any members of the public requested that any consent items be pulled?
No, ma'am.
Thank you very much. Do any board members wish to pull items from the consent calendar?
No, but I move to approve.
Okay, motion to approve by Board Member Contreras, second by Board Member Drucker. Please call the vote.
On the motion of Board Member Contreras, seconded by Board Member Drucker to approve consent items 1 through 10, motion passes. Board Members Desmond and Hensy absent.
Thank you. Next, we have closed session on our agenda. Ms. Winfrey, General Counsel, will now take us into closed session.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We do have one closed session item today pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9 subsection D1. Conference with legal counsel regarding existing litigation in the matter of Shakshia He versus MTS et al.
Closed session.
Yes, so the board is returning from closed session and has no reportable action.
Thank you. Next, there are two presentations on today's agenda. As a reminder, a vote is not required following presentations. Item 1 is an update on the Pronto Fare System. Chris Orlando, Chief Planning and Communications Officer, will provide an update on the process of the system or the success of the system, and share some planned improvements. Joining Chris is Israel Maldonado, the Director of Fare Technology and Operations at MTS, and the Pronto System Administrator. Chris, Israel, you have our attention.
Thank you very much, Chair Edson. We wanted to take the board through an update on the Pronto Fare System. There's lots of interest on the system, as you can imagine, from our riders and around the region. So we wanted to give you an update of where we are with the system to date, as well as a glimpse into some future enhancements that we're planning to make. Israel's been kind enough to join me. He is the system administrator for the system. So all the tough, really technical questions we'll hand over to Israel to answer. So if we could dive in and go to the first slide. So as the board knows, we launched the Pronto system in September 2021. It is a regional fare system. It's account-based, which means users set up an account and manage stored value on that account. It includes ticket vending machines on the platforms, validators, mobile app, as well as physical card media. So the little tap cards that Pronto cards that folks have that you see a graphic of there. Riders can reload their card and tap their card to ride. They can scan a QR code within the mobile app. And we still maintain the capability for riders to pay with cash and on our platforms purchase paper tickets as well. Next slide, please. So Pronto is a joint effort between NCTD and MTS. MTS serves as the program administrator, so they actually administer the Pronto platform. It's supported from a technology basis by the Init Group. They provide the back office support and the technical support for the Pronto system. They also are integral in assessing and helping us adapt and make enhancements to the platform. The platform and the system itself is managed through a collaborative joint process called the Pronto Task Force. And the Pronto Task Force was established when we launched the system through an MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, between MTS and NCTD. The task force meets monthly, reviews the system, looks at enhancements, and defines the future roadmap for the system. Next slide, please. The system was built to be what we call future-proof. So the idea was not only to install a platform that addressed the fare needs of the region today, but also make sure that the technology was adaptable to future uses and how the ridership may evolve in the future. What that means is the validators support full near field communication, or NFC tap functionality. They're also enabled to do credit card transactions. And the system itself is what's called level 3 certified, which means it's certified through the credit card processors to manage credit card transactions. Next slide, please. So that's future, but we wanted to give you a glimpse of how it's used today. So what you see here is a breakdown of transactions, fare transactions by transaction type. So the big purple area there, the 57%, that's the number of our riders who ride using the physical Pronto card. So the tap purple Pronto card. So they're loading value on that Pronto card and they're tapping their card to ride. The blue area there, the 25%, that would be the portion of our riders who are making cash purchases at the TVMs or on the buses, on the Breeze buses. So that would be if they purchased a cash paper ticket on a platform, or they put cash in the fare box on the Breeze bus. And then the 18% would be the percentage of our users who use the mobile app, who use the Pronto mobile app and scan the QR code to ride. Next slide, please. The feedback has been very positive about Pronto. So you see here both the Google App Store rating, which is a 4.6 out of 5, and the Apple Play Store rating, which is a 4.4 out of 5. So this is out of thousands of reviews. So it's getting pretty good feedback, always room for improvement, but it's getting really good feedback. And so, as we continue to refine the system, the feedback we get through those platforms is really helpful. You see here some of the suggestions that have been made through the Apple Store and through the Google Play Store are things that we're actively working on. So the feedback we're getting in these platforms, we're taking that feedback and using it to inform how we evolve the system over time. Next slide, please. And one of those areas in which we're evolving is developing new fare products. So I am very pleased to share with the board that yesterday we launched a new fare product. It's called the Coaster 5-pack and the Coaster 10-pack. And this is a pilot fare product that Israel and his team were kind enough to help us launch. And what it allows the rider to do is to purchase 5 essential day passes on the coaster, and really a regional day pass is what it equates to. And they can use that for any 5 days within a 30-day period, or the 10-pack allows them to ride any 10 days within a 10-day or within a 60-day period, sorry. And the target here is really, we realized that we have our monthly pass, which had been targeted towards commuters, and we had our fare capping, which would be for everyday riders. But there was really nothing to serve that gap of folks who might have a hybrid schedule and not going into the office every day, or also visitors to the region who might be here for a short period of time and riding a lot, but for a short period of time, or even Padres fans who are going down a few times through the course of the season, perhaps, but not enough to warrant the purchase of a monthly pass. So we just launched this yesterday, so it's hot off the presses, and we hope it'll fit a good niche in our customer fare product offerings. Next slide, please. So this is a little bit of a look at the roadmap. So you see the check mark there next to the Coaster 5-pack. We like green check marks. We got that done yesterday. So next up are a few other enhancements. So the team is working on the capability to do validation at the TVMs. The goal here is to increase the points of validation for customers, so they don't always have to find the small validation box on the platform. They can have other points at which to validate the rides. Later this year, we will be adding in-app messaging, so the ability to message our app users within the app. So that's under development right now, and as well as moving the reduced fare applications to an online portal. So those are all in line for this year. Next slide, please. Later this year and into next year, we are preparing for within our capital improvement plan to add more TVMs and validators to our platform. So that request will come before you in the capital improvement plan. We realize that as a year plus into the system, that on our platforms, we need more places folks can pay and buy tickets, and more places that they can validate. So we will be making an ask within the CIP to add more validators and TVMs. We are also have a project that is in the early stages, the ability to add fare on the Breeze buses as an added point of ability to add stored value for customers to extend the places where they could add value to their cards. And then other enhancements, the most notable of which would be open loop payments. So wanted to talk a little bit more in depth about that one, because it's one of, I know, a lot of interest in the region and around the payment world. So next slide, please. So here's sort of the two ways we're approaching open payment, the open payment process. So the first, which is currently under development, which would be contactless open payments. And so what this would enable riders to do would be to tap their bank card on a platform validator or a bus validator and pay with that card. Open loop, they wouldn't have to have a Pronto account. They wouldn't have to have a purple card or an app. They could just tap the card that they have. So that would be sort of the first step. And then another planned improvement would be to have the ability to add the Pronto card to your mobile wallet. So you could put the Pronto card, your Pronto virtual card in your mobile wallet. If you're familiar with the Apple Wallet or the Google Wallet, you could then tap your phone with the validator. And this is important because right now that functionality is through the scan QR codes, which causes a little bit of friction because it's sunny here in San Diego. And so sometimes that screen validator and the QR code can cause some friction. So the ability just to tap the phone is going to be a much better use case for our customers. So these are both under development. In terms of the open loop, wanted just to dive into that a little bit deeper. So next slide, please. So these are some of the things that we're working through really as we speak with Israel and the team, is how do we implement open loop within the context of our system. So there's lots of hurdles to doing this. And so these are a few. So in the context of Pronto, how do you do fare inspection with the credit card payments? How do you do onboard payments? Can you do onboard payments? What does that implementation look like within the requirements of the card network? So financial information of having open loops and folks tapping their actual credit card on our platforms. How do we manage that security risk? So how do we manage in an open loop environment, making sure that those that qualify for reduced fares are getting those reduced fares or can get those reduced fares? So these are all the things that we have to think about as we consider the open loop. And what we're working on with Israel and the team is how can we offer this capability and this enhanced service to our customers and our riders and still address all of these things that we know we need to have on the system. And so what we're working on is, can we get to what's called a minimum viable product? So can we get to an entry into the open loop payment world in a way that addresses some of these things initially, maybe not all of them, but enough where it's a viable way for our users to have more convenience when they ride and visitors here in the region to have more convenience in their ride. So that's what we're actively working on. Next slide, please. Those challenges, like I said, we're working on. So we've had in just this year, I actually think the number is now 5. We've had 4 or so hour sessions with the MTS team, with our technical consultants, and actually the Cal ITP, which is the statewide effort around open payments. They've actively been participating in these sessions. And the goal here is really how do we push the Pronto system towards open loop payments, and what are the things we need to do to develop a phased approach towards this. So that work is progressing really well. And Israel and I hope to come back to our respective boards soon with what we would recommend as that minimum viable product for open loop payments for your consideration, because we think it would be enhancement of the use case for our riders. Next slide, please. And again, so this is just kind of the next step. We're going to continue to search out and look for ways to enhance the rider experience. As I said, we're continuing to participate with our partners, both here locally, our contractors, as well as statewide, to see how we can develop this phased approach to open loop payments. And really what our goal is to make sure our payment system and our fare system is a convenient, seamless way for our customers to pay. And it's also equitable, so it reaches all of our customers, not just those that are technology enabled. And so that's the approach. And we hope to be coming back to you with recommendations on that front here in the coming months. Next slide, please. And with that, we'll take questions.
Well, thank you very much. Before we go to questions, Suhel, do we have any public comments on this item?
No, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. I have a question. So, and a comment. I'm actually excited that contactless open loop payments are in our future, hopefully soon, and believe that any discounted products always are important. You know, that if we're trying to increase ridership, we do anything that we can to attract new riders, right? Or to maintain our existing ridership. One thing I noticed in the release is it doesn't point out how much people save by doing this new discounted fare. I think that's an important marketing.
The 5 and 10 pack.
Yeah.
So on the 5 pack, it's about 40% off if you were to buy the daily passes, and the 10 pack, it's about 50% off if you were to buy 10 daily passes.
Okay, thank you. That's great. Anyone else? Okay, Board Member Contreras.
Thank you so much for this presentation. This is really exciting. There's a group called Ride SD, and they've been really trying to move this forward. So I have a question. I know that to get to an equitable rollout, we're looking for this minimum viable product. Who who actually has to sign off on all this? I know you gave us a list, but if we were trying to say, hey, you know what, before we even have a minimum viable product that has all these different equity components rolled into it, which is incredibly important, is there a way to do a beta rollout before you have a minimum viable product, just to start getting people, there's gonna be a buzz about it, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, I'll say first, we'll come back to you with that definition of what that looks like. So you'll have a chance to review that and ensure that it meets what you're looking for. The question of who will approve that, you'll get a chance to. So that's the first thing. And then I'll let Israel go from there.
Thanks. And in other words, the MVP option would be that beta. And so we just need to make sure that that beta can be baseline and approved, be reasonable by the standards of each of our respective boards to launch. So that would be the answer.
So we're not saying, so we're waiting for the MVP instead of saying, hey, we can reach into the minor leagues and maybe roll out a beta prior to the MVP level.
And important to focus on the minimum viable product, which would be that beta.
Okay.
As long as it's palatable for the respective boards, of course.
It's important to note that those challenges that I went through, the minimum viable product, we may not be able to address all those things. So there's going to be some trade-offs in that initial step in open payment.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah, and the trade-off will be
Trying to shrink the timeline is important.
So the trade-offs will be around how do you give convenience of open payments and still maintain some of those other things that we have. And so we're trying to figure out what are the right ways to approach it, and that's what we'll come back to you with. But currently the technology doesn't allow for all of the things that are embedded in the closed loop system to be applied to open loop. For instance, we have monthly fare capping, which is difficult to handle in an open loop environment, right? It's a data collecting credit card number. It's we can get to some level of fare capping, but we have to decide what the right level is and how to approach that in a way that makes sense, still provides that convenience to customers, but also maintains the integrity of the system.
Okay, yeah, that's awesome. I look forward to that. Obviously, when we roll out the MVP, we're still gonna need to make it better and better and better. So I think we have a good minimum standard that you all have put together. And I will say that as someone who rides transit, and I just see how people pay all the time, the card by far is so much easier to use. But I have, I think we need to we have a lot of room for improvement on app adoption. And I think if we actually want the in-app messaging to touch a wider part of our customer base, we need to increase that adoption of the app. And I think that if we can roll out an MVP version of this open loop system, and we have, I know it's planned improvements, it's not in development stage, but the tap with Pronto Card and mobile wallet will be a game changer, I think, for the adoption, a wider adoption of the mobile app, which means that then we can do these in-app messaging. And can some of that messaging be surveys? Because I know we want to, conduct surveys, or even to say, hey, are you X, Y, and Z, like 18 and under, and maybe you can apply for a discount, or you're a senior, whatever the case might be. I know that was a lot of questions in there, but
Go ahead.
All great questions. And just to provide a little bit of context as to, the question would be, why didn't we just roll out NFC validation with closed loop? A couple things. First, the timeline for implementation of the system was very constrained. It had a 36-month window when usual implementations are about 60 months for fare systems. Just with the need of infrastructure replacement, all of this technology change that happens in 15 years when these systems get replaced. Another one is that we do require the collaboration of some of these major providers, Google, Apple being one of those major ones. Historically, it's been a little bit difficult to achieve from the transit agency perspective. We're working together with Chris's team to move items along on that front. More to come. There will be more to come later this year. In-app messaging, we're excited about this scope. I think this will give us a lot of flexibility that we did not have before. I can tell you that sharing some of the stats on the MTS side, that our mobile app adoption was just tremendous. Compared to the last system where our website was not as heavily used. We anticipated the website would be used quite a bit. And our main website is actually not being used tremendously. It's the app. The app is being used a lot, but goes without saying, technological changes, everyone uses the app. So long story short, in-app messaging, we're definitely going to take a deep dive into all its capabilities and give you guys an update.
Awesome. Yeah, it's something that I had asked about a long time ago, not like super long time ago, but I probably like a year or less, right? But I was like, I'm not a software person, but I feel like we could really utilize our Pronto in such a more dynamic way where, you know, when we're trying to get surveys about rerouting, you know, San Marcos, that we could actually do that in a much better fashion than just having to rely on a pop-up and someone physically being there. So I really appreciate it. And the last thing I will say is that I'm ecstatic to hear about the Breeze Fare Box and being able to let people interact with their payments in that manner. I think is really important for a lot of reasons, especially when we're looking at equity. But thank you so much. That's all from me.
Perfect. Director Jenkins.
Couple questions or one question mainly. If I understand on page 4, the NCTD fare transactions, are you saying 50% of the people paid their fare using Pronto for 2022?
No, so the 57% would be the number of riders that use the Pronto card, so the physical card. And
Okay.
then the 18% use the mobile app.
Right.
So the combination of those two, so roughly 75% paid with Pronto, and then the other 25% would have paid with cash, or a chunk of that is also using Pronto, but using Pronto to purchase using cash to purchase a paper ticket at a Pronto machine and using the paper ticket via Pronto.
Okay, so,
Yeah.
but the point is we have a very large number of our ridership using Pronto.
Very large number of ridership using Pronto, but also I think this is important to remember, still a really healthy number still using cash. So I think that's
Okay.
important for us to keep in mind
Yes.
when we think about these enhancements, that a large part of our riders still use cash.
Right, okay, and then tagging on to the comment about the messaging, that was one thing I think we had talked about previously, was we couldn't get messages or services to our riders because we didn't have their contact information, whereas now we have it
Mhm.
and we will be able to do it
Yeah, so well,
in time.
couple things on the in-app messaging, just for clarity for the board. So you're not emailing the folks directly. What you will be doing is it'll be like a pop-up message within their app experience. So they'll
Okay,
at a certain parameter within the app, they would get a message that pops up like, did you remember to tap or something like that, or other capabilities. So it's that type of messaging, not an outgoing email or text, anything like that. So it's within the app experience.
so could we ask them in that message to do a survey and lead them to a survey or something like that, or?
Potentially, we could,
Okay.
yeah.
And-
One thing to keep in mind, though, that, and this is important for the point that board member Contreras made, is that the app itself serves all riders. So when we do those things, it's
Mhm.
platform wide. So it's our system as well as MTS's system. So
Okay,
uh,
so they could
could-
get multiple messages.
yeah. So we don't delineate within the app experience MTS riders versus NCTD riders.
Okay.
But there should be the capability that, as Criswell mentioned, we could build a parameter to identify a rider accessing the NCTD part of the app where it triggers a pop-up and a deep link.
Okay. What about if you have a rider, will you be able to designate at some point if you have a rider using a specific route or something, all the time and there's something that happens on that route, so they know, find another way? Or is that not the sort of thing we can notify them of in the future?
It's a great question. And I think we have to look to see at these parameters in relation to the trip planner that's embedded within the app and see how we can explore that. It's something for us to look at.
Okay, that would be good, especially if sometimes something happens and there's an accident, and so they know not to take the train up north or find a bus or something.
It's not in the in-app scope as we've defined it currently.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Director Drucker?
Very nice presentation, really appreciate it. What is the MTS breakdown in terms of Pronto, cash?
So in terms of the split of customers that utilize the physical card versus the app, it's about 70-30. 70% physical card, 30% app.
And how many use?
And in terms of validation, in terms of the entire picture, we do about more or less 10% one-way tickets, anonymous one-way tickets. Our cash percentages dropped significantly in the last 5 years. And just with the ability to reload in real time with the mobile app, it's really increased that utilization.
So when a person uses a Pronto card and they get on the bus, they have to tap the card or something, right?
Correct.
Do we capture that person's ID and what bus they're on?
Yes, so the tap is tied to the route and to the,
So to answer Sharon's question, you have that data to be able to send that person that specific message that is on a bus or has taken that bus. You should have that data.
But one clarification, that would require them to actually register their Pronto card, which not all Pronto card users do. If they use the app, correct, right, yeah. Yes. Correct. Correct.
Thank you. Any other questions? No, I'm seeing no hands raised. So thank you very much for the wonderful presentation.
Thank you.
Our next presentation item is a report on the recently held meeting of the Rail Safety and Community Enhancements Committee, better known as RECE. Lillian Doherty, our Director of Planning and Development, will provide an update on items discussed by RECE for the benefit of the full board. Lillian, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair Edson. Good afternoon, board members. As the committee staff liaison for the Rail Safety and Community Enhancement Committee, or RECE, I will be providing you with an update of our progress to date. Next slide. In July of last year, the board approved an ad hoc committee, a limited term and specific purpose committee, to focus on rail and community enhancement projects such as quiet zones, grade separated crossings, and other quality of life improvements. To support this committee and project prioritization, a working group composed of city and county staff members was also formed. The committee and the working group have been meeting since October of last year. Next slide. The purpose of the RECE committee is to strategically recommend safety and quality of life projects along the rail corridor and to work collaboratively with our city and county partners to evaluate opportunities for rail corridor improvements. Next slide. There are several considerations when developing a prioritized list of projects. Board Policy 18, Railroad Safety and Community Enhancement Projects, was initially adopted in 2012 and recently revised last year. Accordingly, NCTD has a long history of supporting desirable community projects. The framework for collaboration starts with agreements that include indemnification and insurance provisions. One of the benefits of looking at regional projects across our two rail corridors is that we can consider grouping projects of a similar type or contiguous geographic location, or that collectively serve historically underserved communities. Through collaboration, we can ask that these projects be included in regional plans, which is an important consideration for grant funding. Next slide, please. The scope of the RISI committee is primarily those projects within the rail right-of-way that improve the safety and quality of life of the surrounding communities. Project examples include grade crossings at grade or grade separated, quiet zones, trails, fences, trenches. But ultimately, local jurisdictions are in the best position to identify the projects that are most needed by their communities. Next slide. As I mentioned, the RISI working group has been meeting since October and receiving similar updates to that of the RISI committee members, including an outline of the applicable laws and regulations and policies, as well as grant opportunities and an explanation of projects envisioned in regional planning documents. Over the last 2 months, working group members have been developing and socializing project priorities for larger group discussion. Next slide. In the most recent February 7th meeting, the committee heard presentations on the benefits and risks of an at-grade versus grade-separated crossing project. After the presentation, the committee members requested an update on project formulation and were advised that an initial set of priorities by rail corridor would be presented at the March RISI committee meeting. The timing of these presentations will position projects to leverage the availability of historic funding levels provided by the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and the Inflation Reduction Act. For NCTD to prioritize the identified projects, we will need a memorandum of understanding, documenting our mutual commitment to work together to plan and further to develop these key projects. Next slide. In addition to the rail crossing presentation, we also heard from Zachary Taylor, our signal manager, and the project manager for the Quiet Zone Roadmap study. This study will be key in helping cities and the county to better understand the process for developing quiet zones and seeking regulatory approval from regulatory agencies. We also received a presentation from Jill Bankston, Director of Engineering for the City of Encinitas, who presented an overview of the steps necessary to implement the El Portal Undercrossing project, a grade-separated project that was completed last year. Next slide. The key takeaways from the February 7th meeting included an emphasis on local jurisdiction participation and the need for collaborative synergy to advance these projects. The RISI committee's work to compile needs across the service area will be instrumental in helping us to understand the project needs across the rail corridors and to develop strategies for implementation. This regional approach will demonstrate a multi-jurisdictional collaborative effort and vision for a safer and enhanced rail corridor that more effectively serves our communities. Moving forward, it is envisioned that we would work collectively to fund and to leverage funding opportunities to implement these identified priority projects. Next slide. So the next steps for the RISI committee include the March presentation on priorities by corridor, and in April, we will continue to receive case studies that share information on different types of projects, such as the Oceanside Quiet Zone and the Carlsbad Village Trench Project, which will be a joint project between presentation between Sandag and the city of Carlsbad. And then in April and June, we will continue discussions regarding priorities and potential strategies for collaboration to advance priority projects. Next slide. With that, that concludes my presentation. Thank you, Chair and Board. I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we move to board questions, and I do believe that the chair of RISI, Director Contreras, wishes also to speak. But before that, I will ask whether we have any public comments on this item today.
No, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Director Contreras and Chair of RISI Contreras.
Yes, thank you. I've really enjoyed chairing the RISI committee. The feedback and active participation from other committee members has been fantastic. It's also been great to see involvement of the staffs from each of the North County cities and the county as well. The dialogue generated through the committee is creating an opportunity for us to look regionally, and that's really important, right? This is all about the region. So getting that feedback in our own communities and prioritizing that in our own jurisdictions and bringing that prioritization here to North County Transit District, it really allows us to get to the needs of our communities and to leverage available funding for so many different opportunities that we have right now. This funding that's available to us, it could be a once in a lifetime type of funding. So being able to address our needs in our community and put it together in a package as a regional effort is really important. Crossings and quiet zones are projects that can be important quality of life measures for each of our communities. I appreciate staff's work on this, and I look forward to continuing to move the discussions forward. And I'm glad the full board was able to hear about the committee's efforts to date. Thank you so much. And thank you to the board for allowing me to chair the RECE committee, one of the sweetest committees that we have.
Well, thank you. And thank you for the update, Lillian. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Seeing none, thank you. Also, Director Contreras. This brings us to the Executive Director's report. Actually, wait, board member. Okay, Director Executive. I ate chocolate.
No report.
Okay, then. Board members, do you have anything to report? Director Weiss.
Just real quick, I wanted to introduce you to my alternate from the city of Oceanside, Councilmember Eric Joyce, who joined us here. So
Everybody.
Hello, Eric. Welcome. Director Contreras.
You know what? I would be remiss if I didn't say that our North County region has our own CMCP. It's an incredible document that really overviews transportation and where the region should go for the comprehensive multimodal. What's the other word? I'm forgetting the other words, but CMCP, and comments are due by, what is it, March 12th? Yeah, I'm going to say it's March 12th. So it's either the 11th or the 12th. It's the 12th, right? So really important, for folks in communities that utilize a lot of transit and want to see our buses get from one place to another on time and quickly so that we have more reliability. Those comments on transit priority lanes and signals is going to be extremely important. Grade separations, all this kind of stuff. Getting a bus rapid transit system, managed lanes on the 78 without having to expand the footprint of it. It's really, really important things in this document. So I urge everybody to take a look at it and provide your comments by March 12th. Thank you.
Thank you for that reminder, Director Jenkins.
I just want to say welcome to Mayor Dane White from Escondido.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for that. I actually attended a meeting yesterday up in San Clemente, drove up there and dragged a very graceful Mary with me. And so as everyone's aware, we have a little bit of a kerfuffle up there. And in September 21, there was significant beach erosion that activated a historical landslide. The tracks at that time moved more than 28 inches laterally toward the ocean. At that time, OCTA placed over 18,000 tons of riprap along 700 feet of track. And that seemed to slow the progress or stop it dead for a while. But unfortunately, the next September, additional slope movement due to high tides, waves, and storm surge began, and passenger train service was suspended due to continued incremental movement. Since that time, work has been ongoing for the design and construction of a tieback system to stabilize the slope. Phase 1 of the tiebacks have been installed. Phase 2 is in process. The good news is that the recent rains and storm activity have shown no additional movement. So it looks like a a good long-term solution at this point. The Pacific Surfliner weekend service returned on February 4th. And the forecast now is that at the end of March, the work will be completed and we will have full resumption of service going north. So there you go for Losan report. Okay, seeing no more hands raised, I just want to thank everyone. And Board Member Weiss, did you raise your hand or?
No.
No, okay, sorry.
Okay.
I thought I saw something out of the corner of my eye. Like to thank everybody and I'd like to get a kickoff. I think tomorrow is Kindness Day, right? So I would like to kick off Kindness Day here. Thank everyone. Our next scheduled meetings are Performance Administration and Finance Committee on March 2nd at 10 a.m. Executive Committee March 7th at 11 a.m. Regular board meeting March 16th at 2 p.m. Rail Safety and Community Enhancement REC Committee meeting on March 20th. So we will have a very busy March ahead of us, but this meeting will be adjourned kindly now. Thank you.